teachers and you get into IEP meetings and you're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I don't know what this means. I just don't know. Well, I'm here today to help walk you through what a typical IEP meeting should look like. And you can take this and use it as a guide, especially if you're a beginning teacher and you just need some extra support. Also, feel free to reach out to me via email. My email is in the description if you have any questions about writing an IEP. So, the first thing I do is I wait for all my participants to get to the meeting. And once all the participants are around the table, which should include typically the special education teacher, a general education teacher, any members from the related service team, your LEA, and any specialists and the parents that are going to attend the meeting. So once everyone has gathered, whether that's virtually or sitting in person around the table, I start by saying, hello, my name is Senorialittle. I am serving as the exceptional children teacher. Let's all begin with introductions. So at this particular moment, we want to take the time to allow everyone around the table to introduce themselves without any interruptions. They're going to state their name and basically what place they are serving as basically on the team, or who they're serving as on the team. For an example, I'm the EC teacher. We have a regular ed teacher. They're serving as them, and so forth. So after that, I like to state the purpose of the meeting. And for an example, if I'm doing a annual review that occurs annually once a year, I would say the purpose of this meeting is ... Whatever your meeting is. It could be an annual review. It could be a reval. It could be an addendum. I don't know. Maybe you had a meeting before and you need to come back and make some changes to the IEP. So you're amending the IEP. You're making those changes. I don't know. Maybe you were supposed to add testing in. So that's what you would do next. After you have talked about the purpose of the meeting and everyone understands the purpose of the meeting, we're going to go into the meeting and basically discuss the child's strengths, whatever that child is good at. So talk about their reading skills, talk about their social and emotional skills. How do they react during morning meeting? How do they interact with you? How do they interact with their peers? What are their strengths in math? What are their strengths in their electives or whatnot? You want to make sure you detail all the strengths, but then you also want to make sure you're giving time for related services or anyone else around the table the opportunity to talk about strengths that they have noticed. And so once everyone has had the opportunity to talk about the strengths, and you can also ask the parents, are there any other strengths that you have noticed that we may have missed? You want to always give the parents an opportunity to add their input because they are a member of the IEP team. For those of you who do not know what IEP stands for, it stands for Individualized Educational Plan. All right. So after the strengths, I typically take the time and look at the assessments, or you can go ahead and ask the parents if they have any concerns. So, you give the time for the parents, you give time for the parents to talk, and they can go over any concerns that they may have about their child, what they would like to see more of, and etc. And it goes on and on and on. And then after the parents talk about their concerns, then we move forward with their vision for their child's future. Like, what do you envision? Or are there any changes that's going to occur within the next year or so, or within a few months that we might need to know about? So we do want to ask the parents about those changes. So furthermore, again, you can go back and review those assessments, But the next thing we do, we want to kind of look at the transition plan. If that student is in middle school, if the student's in elementary school, you really don't have to worry about that right now, because typically they don't look at it until they get like in the 7th, 8th grade of middle school. So if they're in middle school, we're going to talk about the current course of study, their present course of study that they are presently enrolled in. For an example, because I am a life skills teacher, my students are on the North Carolina Extended Content Standards. And with this particular program, it leads to a certificate basically of attendance. So they will not get a high school diploma. And there are other students that might be on a different track. So this is the time where you can talk about their transition goals and so forth. So the next thing I like to do is I like to look at the present levels of academic performance. And let's just say the student has goals in reading, writing, math, social, emotional, and speech. Well, speech adds their input. They talk about what they see presently within the class setting, or if they're pulling them out, they talk about their observations. They basically talk about where they are right now. Not last year, but right now. So we give speech time to talk. If there's an occupational therapist, we give them time to talk. Then as the exceptional children teacher, I will go over the reading, writing, math, social, emotional goals and talk about their present levels, where they are, why they are in the program, why is there a need for them to be separated from their non-disabled peers, and so forth. I also take the time to talk about if they're, to ask the parents if there are any changes to their medication or health history. Is there anything I need to update, and so forth. Moving forward, I then go over their goals. Speech may have goals. Occupational therapy may have goals. I typically have a goal in reading and maybe 3 objectives. A goal in math and maybe 3 objectives. Objectives means benchmarks. So, this is how we're working up to that major goal. And we want to make sure that when we are writing IEP goals, folks, that the goals are measurable. Okay, we don't want to write a goal and it's not measurable. Remember this, all goals must be measurable, because as exceptional children teachers, we have to be able to track data, and there's no way that we're going to be tracking data if we don't have a goal that's measurable, right? And that's how parents can also look at their child's progress. And when we come to meetings, we should be able to explain. And in a couple of more weeks, I plan to talk a little bit about the importance of data charts and making sure that your data is in a place where you can keep it. It's in a where you can pull it up in your IEP meetings and like show the parents where the child is, because sometimes explaining is not good enough. I know with me, I'm a fast talker. I talk really fast, and sometimes I ask my parents, am I talking really fast? And so you got to understand, you have to kind of take the time to break down what you're talking about. You're with that child every day in class, but maybe the parents don't understand the terminology that you're using. So it's very important for you to have like a data chart or some kind of visual to help them understand what you are saying about their child. And they will ask questions, and you need to be prepared to answer those questions at the meeting. So anyway, back to, like I said, you want to look at the students' goals and make sure that you're going over the goals. And then we will have the opportunity to look at any accommodations or modifications. We want to make sure that's in place in their IEP. And we also want to make sure if they're taking any tests, that's in their IEP. For an example, my students, they will take the North Carolina Extend test, and typically they take that in reading, math, and science. And so I have to make sure that is in their IEP prior to testing. So it's very important that you are looking at the students' files, looking at their IEPs ahead of time, so you can know whether or not you need to add things to their IEP. For my English language learners, they're going to take the ACCESS testing, and some of them have already taken the ACCESS test. But that still has to be in their IEP, as well as whether or not that student is an English language learner. whether or not they're deaf or hard of hearing, whether or not they have any behaviors that impedes the learning of others. And if so, how do you help that student, right? You're going to probably have a behavior intervention plan in the IEP, so or BIP. So there's a lot of things that we consider in meetings. After I talk about these things, I like to talk about the service time and the frequency of the services. So in the occupational therapists and speech therapists talk about their service time and their delivery, and they talk about whether or not it's going to be on a consult basis, which basically they're consulting with the teacher to talk about the child's needs, or whether or not they're going to be pulling them or coming to the class to work with them, whatever that child's need may be. After we talk about that, we talk about transportation. Is transportation needed? Some parents bring their children. That's okay, right? There are students that do need transportation, but we have to make sure that's in the IEP. Then furthermore, we want to talk about whether or not that student is eligible for extended school year, or ESY. So in order to be eligible for extended school year, a student has to show regression after the standard breaks. So for an example, if a student comes back after Christmas, you see like a huge decline. A student comes back after spring break, you see a huge decline. A student comes back after Thanksgiving, there's a huge decline. So we want to make sure that our data is showing that these students need that ESY time, or extended school year time, in which they will complete during the summertime, right? Let me see. Pretty much after that, and I hope I haven't missed anything, I typically go ahead and finalize the IEP. But before I finalize the IEP, I have to make sure that I have all the signatures of the meeting attendees. Also make sure that we have the minutes in order. Hopefully you have asked someone at the beginning of the meeting to take the minutes. That's one thing I forgot to say. At the beginning of the meeting, someone needs to take the minutes, especially if you're leading the meeting. So you can ask someone in the meeting, will you please take the minutes? Generally the LEA will do it. At least in my situation, the LEA does it. So we can finalize, then we move forward to the prior written notice. And in the prior written notice, we basically are going to be talking about the proposals, the refusals, were there any rejections, what did we put in place, and so forth. I will talk about the prior written notice another time, because I am running out of time, but I do hope that this will at least be helpful for beginning teachers starting out. And until next time.